People think China could just blockade the Philippines, cut off the country, isolate it completely. It can't. Not because it doesn't want to, because the math doesn't work. Today I'm going to show you why a full blockade is strategically impossible. Not unlikely. Impossible. I am Miro. I study geopolitics not to predict wars, but to understand why certain things can and cannot happen. The Philippines isn't an island. It's 7,600 islands, with over 36,000 kilometers of coastline and multiple deep water passages connecting it to the Pacific Ocean, the South China Sea, and regional shipping lanes. That geography creates 5 hard constraints that make a complete blockade impossible. Here are the 5 constraints. First constraint, geography, specifically the number of exits. When people imagine a blockade, they picture a bottleneck. One way in, one way out. Easy to control. The Philippines has no bottleneck. It has multiple deep water passages that cannot all be monitored simultaneously. Let me show you the most important one. The Bashi Channel. This sits between northern Luzon and Taiwan. It's not a narrow strait. It's 250 kilometers wide. That's the distance from London to Paris. And it's deep. Over 1,000 meters in the center. Why does depth matter? Because submarines can transit underwater at depth. You can't see them. You can't stop them with surface ships. A Chinese destroyer sitting in the middle of the Bashi Channel can be bypassed by a submarine running 200 meters below the surface. That's just one passage. There's also the Balintang Channel in the center, the Babuyan Channel to the south, the Palawan Passage on the southeastern side of the South China Sea, 35 to 40 nautical miles wide, entirely within Philippine waters, the Verde Island Passage, and dozens of smaller passages through the Sulu archipelago. You can't guard 50 exits simultaneously. To prevent all transits, China would need warships positioned at every major passage hundreds of kilometers apart, maintaining 24-hour patrols in deep water where they're vulnerable to submarine attack. The Philippine Navy said it directly in January 2025. The archipelago sits astride critical corridors. Geography gives the Philippines an unmatched strategic advantage. Second constraint, naval logistics. The boring math that determines what's actually possible. China's navy has 9 replenishment ships, not 900, 9. 7 smaller Type 903 A-class ships and 2 larger Type 901 class ships. These aren't unlimited supply vessels. Each one can support a small task force of 2 to 3 warships for about 2 weeks before the supply ship itself needs to go back to port and reload. To actually blockade the Philippines, you'd need at least 15 to 20 warships positioned simultaneously across all those passages. Each task force needs its own supply ship. But China only has 9 total. And those 9 ships can only operate for 2 to 3 weeks before exhausting their fuel, ammunition, and provisions. For comparison, the United States Navy has integrated logistics across 71 Pacific installations. American carrier strike groups can sustain operations for 6 to 8 months. China has 2 overseas bases, Djibouti in Africa, barely functional for this purpose, and Ream in Cambodia, inside the first island chain. China proved this limit in June 2025. 2 carriers operating together for 27 days, a record, required every available supply ship. A blockade would exhaust logistics even faster. The practical limit is stark. Even if China wanted to blockade the Philippines, it could not sustain the operation beyond 2 to 3 weeks. Third constraint, air and missile coverage, or more specifically, the limits of range and geometry. To enforce a blockade, you need to detect ships, track them, and either stop them or sink them. That requires radar, fighter aircraft, and anti-ship missiles with sufficient range. China's carrier-based fighters have a combat radius of about 200 to 400 nautical miles. To cover the Bashi Channel alone, which is 250 kilometers wide, you'd need continuous air patrols. Not just presence, repeated sorties to maintain coverage through weather, crew rest, and mechanical maintenance. That means 40 to 50 daily fighter sorties minimum, sustained for weeks. It's not sustainable. Anti-ship missiles have better range, but they need continuous targeting data and ammunition resupply. Radar and detection face their own problems. In shallow water, Active sonar becomes significantly less effective because signals refract and scatter off the seafloor. Passive sonar gets overwhelmed by ambient noise from wind, waves, and commercial shipping. That means submarines, including those carrying supplies to the Philippines, are difficult to detect and track. Meanwhile, Allied radar systems have expanded dramatically. Japan provided the Philippines with the Horizon 2 air surveillance radar system. Detection range over 350 nautical miles. The Philippines also operates maritime patrol aircraft with advanced radar. Japan and Philippines are networking these systems, creating 3,000 nautical miles of shared visibility. The intelligence asymmetry this creates is decisive. The Philippines and its allies can see where Chinese ships are positioned and route supply convoys around them. You can't enforce a blockade when the other side can see your positions and route around them. If this is making sense, hit subscribe because there's more to this story. Fourth constraint: international law, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which China has ratified. The Philippines is an archipelagic state. That's a legal category under UNCLOS. It means the country is made entirely of islands, and archipelagic states have special rights. One of those rights is establishing archipelagic sea lanes. These are designated passages through which foreign vessels, including military vessels, have the right to transit. No permission required, no advance notification. The Philippines formalized 3 such passages in November 2024. Any attempt to block these passages violates UNCLOS. Under UNCLOS, peaceful transit through Philippine waters is legally protected, and any blockade that can be bypassed, which this one can, is legally unenforceable. Here's where it gets interesting. Humanitarian relief convoys are protected under international law. If China attempted a blockade, alliance partners could organize relief convoys and claim humanitarian protection. China would face a choice: tolerate relief deliveries, which negates the blockade, or fire on humanitarian vessels, which is a war crime. The legal framework creates political and diplomatic costs that make enforcement unsustainable. Fifth constraint: Allied geographic access and naval power. The Philippines doesn't sit in isolation, it sits within a broader alliance structure. The United States, Japan, and Australia all have strategic interests in preventing a Chinese blockade. The United States has access to Philippine military facilities through the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. 9 locations now, several positioned in northern Luzon, less than 200 miles from Taiwan. The US also maintains nuclear-powered attack submarines forward-based at Guam. These can operate for months without resupply. Japan has provided maritime patrol aircraft, advanced radar systems, and Coast Guard vessels to the Philippines. Japan's location means Japanese forces can reinforce the Philippines within hours. The United States operates 71 military installations across the Indo-Pacific. China operates 2 limited overseas bases. That basing advantage means any sustained Chinese blockade attempt invites immediate US intervention. Freedom of navigation operations, convoy escorts, positioning of advanced air defense systems on Philippine territory. China would face a choice: accept Allied resupply operations, which negates the blockade, or engage US military forces directly, which escalates to potential full-scale conflict. Now here's the important clarification: the part people get wrong. China can harass specific locations. It has done this successfully. Second Thomas Shoal, Scarborough Shoal, using Coast Guard vessels and maritime militia, ramming boats, using water cannons, blocking approaches. This works because it targets a single, isolated outpost, a grounded ship or a reef that requires limited supply, and enforcement is non-lethal, avoiding escalation to armed conflict. But there's a massive difference between harassing a single reef and blockading an entire country. Scaling from gray zone harassment to national blockade requires kinetic force, sinking ships, persistent air cover, logistics that China does not possess. The moment China shifts from harassment to actual blockade enforcement, firing on vessels, sinking cargo ships, it triggers everything we just discussed. UNCLOS violations, international naval intervention, potential full-scale armed conflict. The costs become prohibitive and Allied forces intervene. China can contest space. It can make certain areas dangerous or difficult to access, but it cannot isolate 7,600 islands across 36,000 kilometers of coastline while confronting Allied military power and the immovable facts of geography. Let me bring this together. A blockade is not about wanting to do something, it's about having the capacity to do it. And capacity is determined by geography, logistics, air coverage, international law, and Allied positioning. China's navy is modern and capable, but it faces 5 constraints that willpower cannot overcome: geography, logistics, air coverage limits, international law, and Allied positioning. None of this is about winning or losing, it's about understanding what is and isn't possible. The Philippines sits on geography that makes comprehensive blockade impossible. That's not propaganda, that's the math. China can harass, it can contest, it can make life difficult in specific areas, but it cannot isolate an entire archipelago nation while Allied navies operate freely in the Pacific. The conflict continues, tensions remain, but the idea of a complete blockade misunderstands the basic strategic reality of trying to control an archipelago this large, this connected, and this geographically positioned. If this helped you understand why some things that sound simple are actually impossible, share it with someone who's tired of hype and wants clarity instead. If you want to see how people build location-independent income and travel freedom when big powers make decisions above their heads, check out the Freedom Cruise Blueprint linked below.